Okay, hello class. So, what's for dinner? You guys have plans for dinner tonight? Okay. Today we're going to talk about different things that animals eat and different ways that animals get their energy. Okay. And specifically, we're going to be talking about a water food web. All right. So you can see I put a pile of pre-tests on your desk there, and if you can answer those questions, just take a minute. Do whatever you have on the top of your head, what you can relay immediately to me here. So, a few questions, and then we'll go on. When you are done with those questions, just indicate that to me. Maybe I put your pencil down. If you're not done, that's fine. You go ahead and put your pencil down, and we will wrap that up in a moment. So our objectives for today's class are we're going to identify some producers and consumers in a food web. So if you recall from last lesson, we discussed what a producer was and what a consumer was. Remembering the producers are those organisms that get their energy from the sun or from other sources other than they're creating their own energy within them. Consumers have to eat something else, in effect. So they're going to consume something, take it into their bodies, and eat it for their energy. We're going to list 3 different types of consumers and be able to label those consumers on an actual food web. Okay? And also we're going to be thinking about the impact of different environmental disasters, environmental changes that will affect the resource availability, food availability for different organisms. Okay? So, this is an example of a food web, and you guys are going to have this in a moment on a worksheet to work through. And we are going to, I'm going to just pass out these. Work on identification of producers and consumers on here. Can anyone, while we're passing these out, can anyone give me an example of a type of a consumer? A classification of a consumer.
Classification or example?
Just an example of a consumer.
Me.
Okay, you are fantastic. You are a consumer. So let's go a little further. What type of consumer are you as far as what do you eat? What do you consume?
Technically, we're omnivores, plants and meat.
Okay, so that word that you just said, omnivore. Omnivore. Okay, so that's one type of consumer, an omnivore. And that you said again was what?
Non-omnivore eats both plants or berries or something like that and other animals.
Okay, so plants and animals. Very good. So that's one kind. Another kind, does anyone have another one? I saw another hand over here. Another type of consumer. Haley.
Carnivore?
Carnivore, yes. Carnivore. Okay, what's that mean? Anybody help me out here? Leon.
They like to eat meat.
They like to eat meat, okay? A carnivore eats meat, an omnivore eats meat and vegetable matter, okay? So this vor thing at the end, that's an eater, like what you eat, okay? So one more kind of organism here. Bonnie.
Herbivore.
Herbivore, okay. So what about an herbivore? What's an herbivore do? Eat. Plants. Very good. So we have plant eaters, herbivores. Meat eaters are what?
Carnivores.
Carnivores. And those that eat meat and plants are?
Omnivores.
Omnivores. Good job, guys. Okay, so in this is on your worksheet. We're going to be working through just questions 1 through 3 today. And we're going to identify first the organisms in this particular food web, which you would consider producers. Again, somebody tell me what a producer is. Where are we looking for those producers? John?
On the food web?
Well, you
Or
have
a
the
definition.
specific, just like a definition of a producer.
An organism that gets its energy from the energy of the sun and carbon dioxide.
Great. Okay, we'll just go with that for right now. All right, so that's question 1. In question 2, you're going to actually identify on this food web the different types of consumers that we just discussed here. Okay, so take a moment. You guys can work in small groups with the people next to you and identify that. You can actually just write a very clear, like, if you see a carnivore on there, write a big C. One more thing, who knows how to read these food webs? Does anyone have any ideas? Okay, Haley.
Use follow the arrows.
Follow the arrow. So if I'm looking at this arrow here, now is this limpet eating the lobster?
No.
Or is it the other way around?
The other way around.
Okay, so if this is what's getting eaten by who? Does that make sense? Okay, so the direction of the arrow is the direction of where the food is going. Okay? So take a minute. Feel free to discuss and identify those organisms.
I'm not sure what's there, but I guess goals are on the board.
Yes, question. What is a limpet? What we know from this, it's a crustacean, is what it is. But what we know from this is that it's eating the plant, right? Eating the producer there, right? Okay.
Do we follow specifically the arrows, but like, what if we say the crab eats more than mussels? Like, are we just following that worksheet, or are we thinking about what it actually eats?
Just this worksheet. Yeah. For this moment, it's a great question.
Should we
Yes.
do number 3?
Should we do number 3? If you are ready for number 3, you can certainly move on to number 3. Go ahead. What questions do we have on this? If people are not quite done with the labeling of the different types of consumers, is there one that's causing a lot of difficulty? Any particular organism up there? Okay. So I am going to, I'll put these up here also, the 3 questions for number 3 that are up there. And I'm happy to, let's discuss this as a class also. If you want to take a little time to do this in groups, we could do that. Let's do this as a class. What would happen if the mussels were to die out due to disease? What's going to happen to the rest of the organisms up there? Any ideas to begin with? Dylan?
Mussels are to die. I guess the crab population probably decrease and the phytoplankton would increase.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that? Any problems with that? Leon?
I think that since the mussels would die out, the crab would be off. They would die out a little bit, but they also feed on the limpets, so that limpets might see more of the predators and more feeding on it than usual because the mussels were removed.
Great. So maybe all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure on the limpets, or the limpets are getting eaten more because there's less mussels for those crabs to eat. Bonnie?
The limpets might also feel additional pressure from the whelks, because the whelks eat the mussels. And so if there weren't any mussels for whelks to eat, then their primary food source would be back to the limpets.
Gulls and lobsters.
And the gulls and the lobsters do the same. So what about that limpet population? Overall, does it look like the limpets are going to be happy and like lots of them around, or no? Maybe decrease? I hear. Okay, I think that's a very great conclusion to make. How would the zooplankton be affected if the fish population were to increase?
Their population would also increase.
If the fish population increases, the zoo population would increase. Okay, and tell me more about that. How would that happen?
Well, if there were more fish, they would eat lots of prawn, so there may be fewer of those to eat the zooplankton.
Okay.
So they might thrive.
Okay, that makes sense to everybody? Anybody have any problems with that? All right, let's go on to the last question here. How would the whelk population be affected if crabs were removed? So let's remove the crabs. What do those whelks eat? Anything that's the same as the crabs? What is the same as what the crabs are eating?
Mussels and limpets.
The mussels, they're both eating mussels, okay?
However, gulls and lobsters eat both whelks and crabs.
Okay,
There'll
so
probably be increased predation.
increased predation
whelks.
for the whelks because all of a sudden there's not crabs available for those organisms to eat, right? Okay, so is this easy? Is it like easy to know for sure what's going to happen if we remove an organism or change the population of an organism? Do we know for sure what's going to happen? Does it affect just one other organism, or is it different than that?
Affects multiple organisms.
Affects multiple organisms, right? Okay. So let's go on here to do our pretest. We'll wrap this up with our pretest and see if you guys made any changes. Before we do that, let's identify a couple of these organisms. Let's start with the mussels. What did we have the mussels identified as our type of consumer, right? Because our mussels are a consumer. What type of consumer are they?
Omnivore.
Herbivore in this case. They also
They eat the zooplankton and phytoplankton. So omnivore.
Okay, so they're eating both the zooplankton and the phytoplankton, so officially an omnivore, right? Okay, so let's think about the crab. What about the crabs? Are they
They're just
Carnivores.
carnivores? They're eating limpets, they're eating mussels. I don't think I missed anything else there. So carnivores, right? So they're eating other animals or other consumers. You can think of it that way. And let's do one more. How about the seaweed? Oh, it's not a consumer. Never mind. That's a producer, right? So what about the lobster?
carnivore.
Carnivore. Yep. And the limpets. That's the one I was going for there.
Herbivore.
Herbivore. Yep. Just eating the seaweed. All right. So what questions do we have before we do a little our post-test? Bonnie.
A lot of times a gull is like classified as an omnivore because it eats pretty much anything as a scavenger.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it would be classified as a carnivore.
In this simplified food web, it is represented as a carnivore. Yes, I think they do also eat some producers. So in a sense, they would be omnivores, yes. So this is very simplified, okay? As far as complex as this is, it's actually very simplified also. So keep that in mind. All right? All right, so I'm going to pass this out. If any other questions arise, please raise your hand, let me know. Let's pass those around. All right, so let's take we have 1 minute to wrap that up, and then we'll be on our way. So just write down quickly those answers to those questions. And when you're done, you can put all of those pre and post tests. Make sure you circle which one was which, if you haven't already. Put them in a pile on your desk, and you can pass them to an end, and I'll pick those up for you. Oh yes, be sure to write your name on them. Much appreciated.
Oh, there's also
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I'll see you guys next time.